Yamhill County, Oregon, Couch Creek starts in the Coast Range Mountains and works its way down to the Tualatin River. Part of its route passes through Leland Payne's Homestead Tree Farm. A culvert that had been placed in the creek more than 40 years ago was deteriorating and needed to be replaced. This culvert had become an impediment to the native migratory cutthroat trout that call Couch Creek home. By bringing together multiple stakeholders, Leland was able to get technical and financial support to replace several old pipes with modern fish-friendly culverts.
I work for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. My name is Monica Blanchard. I'm the Assistant District Fish Biologist for the North Willamette District Watershed. And so I was contacted by Luke, who works for the Watershed Council locally, and was asked to coordinate on this really awesome passage project. So we work really closely with Oregon Department of Forestry to basically maintain fish passage in forest lands. So the way that our kind of fish regulations work is that we grandfather in old culverts and bridges that may not be up to our current standards for fish passage. But once you actually want to replace them, they're getting old, we require that they meet our current standards. And at this site we have cutthroat trout, which are one of our native migratory fish species. So if there's any of those species present at a site, it needs to comply with our fish regulations and allow passage up and downstream.
So I'm Luke Westphal. I'm the Executive Director for your local Greater Yamhill Watershed Council. We're a nonprofit that helps public, private, and tribal stakeholders do good things on the ground for fish and wildlife and the health of our lands and water in the Yamhill and Chehalem valleys. So we had a unique opportunity to partner with Nicole and Leland. They've nurtured and stewarded this property for decades. This culvert is being worked on, as well as 2 other culverts that are on the property. And so it's a unique call that you get to have someone say, hey, we'd really like to do something with this property in terms of our creek, and we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're doing the right and the good thing for the aquatic organisms out here.
So we have been working on improving fish passage for many years. 2007 maybe that we started to have actual kind of more regulations regarding improving fish passage and maintaining fish passage. And for our regulations, that's to the historic extent. So if fish were there in the past, we need to maintain passage to those areas. There are a lot of complicated factors for fish in the Northwest. And a lot of our fish passage regulations for especially this part of the Willamette Valley are focused on our anadromous species, so our salmon and steelhead, which are also, very commercially valuable. We recreationally fish for them. They have huge, tribal importance. So these are really, really, important species for our region. However, there are a lot of impacts for these fish. And passage is just one piece of the puzzle. So we have seen with passage projects, I've worked on a number of projects where we literally have fish moving past the construction site before the construction is finished. You put water in the creek and you provide passage, and I've had adult coho swim right past me. So providing passage is a really important part of kind of the many-piece puzzle of trying to bring our native fish species back. For this specific site, it's cutthroat trout that we're focused on. And our cutthroat populations, we actually don't have a ton of information on them because they are less of a kind of focal species for some places in the state. But we do have a lot of kind of historical conversations we've had and knowledge that, our cutthroat populations have been impacted by these reduced connectivity between habitats. So a project like this is really important, even though it is not, focused on our kind of more charismatic big salmon and steelhead. It is really important to provide that connectivity for our cutthroat trout populations. So it's very exciting. Our native migratory fish, the reason we kind of call them out for passage is they require multiple different habitats to kind of complete their life history. So they're going to be moving around in the stream a lot more than some of our other fish.
But I remember, Leland, when you had Monica and I out, you shared a little bit about the history of this pipe, and this was a pipe that you put in, that you were able to do. How long ago was that?
That was 40 years ago. I've been longer than that. I put that road in up here. I didn't have a road on that side. I knew I had to get a culvert in order to do anything on it.
The Watershed Council and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife were able to come out to visit this culvert to determine what size might be needed nowadays. So we walked downstream, took measurements, walked upstream and took measurements. And one of the things that we found out by doing that was what's currently in here is about a 4-foot pipe. Leland had looked at putting in a 6-foot pipe. And what we were able to determine was that an even larger pipe was needed than that to enable fish to migrate, debris to flow, and make sure that we're mimicking those natural processes that the state's trying to accomplish.
From a, potentially a road landowner perspective, this 4-foot pipe is functioning. From the fish perspective, downstream at what we typically have when we have small, undersized pipes, we get a big plunge pool at the downstream end because the water's coming through this small pipe and getting funneled like a fire hose, and it's carving out really big plunge pools at the bottom, and then that just over time this pool gets deeper and deeper and the culvert stays where it is. So we end up having what we call a perched culvert. So it's hard for fish to get in there, especially at low water flows. So there might be times when there's enough water in here that fish can go up. It's a really sweet spot because with a small pipe you're going to have really strong velocities oftentimes through that pipe such that a fish cannot swim up it, and then at low water they're not going to be able to jump into it. What also can happen is that you get big piles of debris at the top end, because you're getting this backup. Water can't get through the pipe fast enough, so you're getting rocks and cobbles that fall out. You end up having to maintain it more and maybe move out some of that sediment because it ends up blocking your culvert. So there's a lot of things that over time make a 4-foot pipe not as functional as a larger pipe. For our fish regulations, we require that the culvert, the pipe, or whatever you're putting in be at least the width of our ordinary high water mark. So we move outside the influence of the culvert, measure ordinary high about 6 times, and then take an average of that. And so when we came out here, we realized that we needed about a 9-foot culvert to actually comply with our fish passage regulations. And so that's how we came to that number. It does feel kind of arbitrary, and I know it can also feel like a huge change from what has been working in the past. But those large pipes allow for debris to flow freely and then also for fish to move up and down freely, ideally year-round or kind of whatever that stream would require. For this culvert, you can see there's actually water not coming through the culvert currently. So it is perched, so the height of the culvert is way above the pool. And then also it's rusted out, so there's actually water that's not making it through the culvert and is flowing subsurface, below the culvert. So this provides a problem throughout the year, really, because it's hard for fish to migrate up underneath that culvert. A huge problem for juvenile fish. So we require passage for juveniles as well as adults. So we kind of envision, adults salmon coming back, and they can jump very well. And so they can get into even some of our perched culverts. They're very proficient at jumping. However, our juveniles have a much harder time. So, our juveniles are gonna be moving throughout the system as well. Sometimes they're looking for cold water, refugia during the summer, and they can't get to that oftentimes with culverts like this. So it's really important to have a culvert be able to pass water and fish and debris and rocks throughout the year. So with this new culvert, it's going to be basically at or below the ground level. There'll be native material through it, and those fish will be able to move up and down throughout their habitat.
So one of the opportunities that partnering with your local soil water conservation district or local watershed council is trying to provide a variety of resources that can help a culvert project move forward. Sometimes that takes the form of partnering together on grant applications. There are other resources that can be brought in, matching time from state agencies to help with activities such as fish salvages, Sometimes you're even able to partner in forestry settings with an adjacent industrial timber organization. So one of the unique things that we were able to do with this project is to partner with the Weyerhaeuser company. Not only does the Payne family have an existing relationship with Weyerhaeuser, but one of the main contractors that's working on this project and others, LAUGHLIN Logging Company, they also have a relationship with Weyerhaeuser. So building on that framework, we were able to kind of expand this effort, work together on multiple land ownerships, and work on multiple culverts.
So from the fish passage component, we work really closely with Oregon Department of Forestry. Oregon Department of Forestry and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife have kind of an agency collaboration. So we're engaged with the stewardship, foresters. We have kind of communication on an ongoing basis about different projects. And so we're pretty closely linked. So you can reach out to ODF or ODFW, and we also have a website you can go to find your local district and assistant district fish biologists. We have a few restoration-focused employees that can come out, and if you are interested in working on restoration on your land. But I think one of the great things is to contact early. So I think that was what was so awesome about this project is that we were contacted through the chain of agencies a while ago, and so it gives us time to, for example, for the Watershed Council to apply for grants. That can take months, but it's a great way to help subsidize the project. It also allows us to all come out and kind of have that group discussion on what the different issues are, and really kind of formulate a plan. So it's good to just call often and call early. I love the excuse to come out and walk through a beautiful forest like most of my coworkers. So it's a great, we really love to come out and just be in that conversation. I think that communication early on will make a project really successful. We are all evolving our science and our understanding of these processes. So it's very understandable that it's hard to keep up with as a individual landowner, and we don't expect that. So you can call us and we can keep you up.
I was a stewardship forester and private forest program. We work directly with landowners of the state of Oregon to help them plan and execute installations of culverts like this on private lands. Leland had me out here to look at a number of different issues, and one of them was this culvert in specifically. And he knew that it was reaching the end of its lifetime. It was rotting out, and he was concerned about it. So he started to get my involvement probably 4 or 5 years ago at least.
To get this construction project going for this culvert replacement, we will first evaluate the site and decide where we want to put our fill material, our waste material. We'll do some tree removal, and we will set up for dewatering the site. We will start by removing the fill, removing the pipe, and we'll excavate down to the engineered level. We'll get our grade set. Then we'll bring in the culvert pipe. The culvert pipe size will be 103 by 71 smashed culvert pipe, 40-foot long. Once we get the grade set, compacted, we will start backfilling the pipe once we have it installed, bolted together. We'll start backfilling in lifts and compacting it with the machine with a compactor, and build ourselves back up. And then we will take some of the leftover boulders and stuff that are on site and rip wrap the inlets and outlets, and we will straw, hay bale all the exposed dirt and put everything back to bed. I've worked with Weyerhaeuser on this. Weyerhaeuser paid for the engineering for both large pipes, and they are buying the pipe on the main road because it's a shared road between Weyerhaeuser and Payne's. Weyerhaeuser is really good about cooperating with landowners and helping on these kind of projects.
You know, Weyerhaeuser has a policy of cost sharing on road systems, especially those that, you know, that we use. So we own land next to his property. So one of the culverts that he replaced was on our haul route. So, you know, of course, we're going to cost share with all landowners when it comes to that. I suggested that we reach out to a consulting engineer to actually do a design. It's much easier. You spend a couple $1,000s on a design, but when it comes to try and, you know, field fitting culverts, it's much easier if you have some plans in place. We offered to provide those plans, and it actually saves, or it can save on equipment time when you have a set of plans in place rather than trying to fiddle around field fitting the pipe while all the equipment's there. Weyerhaeuser is always interested in pursuing those types of projects.
You've got populations of fish below this culvert and above. And what we did here, essentially, you can see we connected the two. So there's these situations where we see, you know, migratory cutthroat is what we're talking about here. And there are populations that, you know, sometimes they live a very small little section of their life in one little area, but there's also situations where they become migratory. And we see where cutthroat can migrate down to the bigger rivers or even out to the estuary. And vice versa, depending on. So, you know, I think, you know, as far as, you know, biology and, you know, recovering salmonids, being able to open up habitat is the most important thing. And that's why this is big. Because fixing this site, we basically opened up more habitat for these fish. It provides more resilience for them to survive and just, I mean, all the way down the lines. In Oregon, whenever you put a new structure in, it's got to meet basically one active channel width. So this stream is essentially roughly 9 feet, the active channel. If you look at the natural channel and you measure it, it's at least 9 feet. The size of this structure needs to also meet that criteria. And the idea being that, you know, we have to have a culvert here because there's a road, but we're trying to make it where stream simulation, when the fish go through it, it's almost like they're in a natural environment. You can see this thing's big enough when you pick up a log, you know, this is a little branch, but, you know, the idea is this thing can come through the culvert, right? You see these trees around us. Well, I mean, some of these are going to fall down the creek, and the idea that the bigger it is, the more chance wood and gravel is going to easily move through these pipes. And so not only fish, but, you know, gravel and physical habitat. So that's why we're always, you know, thinking big. And again, I always like to tell people that that's the state standard. The federal standard, if there were salmon here, would be 1.5. So it'd be more like 13.5, 14 feet. So you'd probably be looking at a big open bottom arch, or in some cases even a bridge. I know a lot of landowners, it seems like it's overkill, but when you start to look at it and you realize it's not just fish passage, it's really the kind of ecology and the whole function of the stream. That's what we're trying to get to. When you look at the before and after, so, you know, we're looking at the after, and this is a nice deep pool here. I'm not sure how deep it is, but it's a few feet deep. This is just beautiful. This is a huge deep pool. They're migrating up these little riffles, these subunits through here, and they get up into this giant pool in there. I mean, this is like heaven, right? I mean, there's some wood, there's some rocks, and now they've got even cover to get up to their next segment. So if you imagine, I'll bet you if you come back here in a year or two, this thing's going to be chock full of fish because they're going to be migrating through and they're going to find this spot. It's kind of ironic because it is unnatural, it's a culvert, but there still is habitat provided here.
So as a watershed council, this is a really exciting project because we get to see habitat connectivity in an upper watershed and an area that has some really resilient populations of cutthroat trout that need a little bit of support. So this was a great opportunity for us to see habitat connectivity occur, not only for the fish species that are here, but for all of the materials that are flowing up and down the soils, the sediments, and the wood. And I just wanted to highlight the unique partnerships that this project brought together. So you have the local Payne family brought in all of the experts and all of the resources that they would need to make this project go from point A to point B. The Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board offers a small grant program, which is an excellent candidate for any private small woodland family to partner with a soil water district, a watershed council, or your local tribe to try to get some funding. They do up to $15,000 these days for OWEB small grants. So these are really good opportunities to partner with a state funding resource to get a local fish passage issue addressed. All these people are working together to find the resources to work with these small family woodland owners. You know, this was something pretty big to see happen for one subbasin on Couch Creek, to have this many miles opened up across multiple stems of this tributary. The after results are pretty incredible. You see, not only has the fish passage concern been fully addressed with how the culvert was designed and installed, but you also have all the bells and whistles. Behind us and around us, smaller alders that were in the way of the operation were knocked down, and those will provide habitat and structure for the creek itself. You can also see that all of these really nice western red cedars, some yews further down, all these really nice trees that are cherished by the landowners were able to be saved. And so it's really nice to see. Everybody did a great job out here, and we're really excited to watch this over the years, see how the channel changes, and hopefully have a maintenance-free, well longevity culvert for the Payne family.
You know, Leland really brought this all to bear, and starting a conversation a number of years ago with me, and although it took a number of years, I think that was the right process because it brought everybody on board. Leland is the type of landowner that is just above bar. I've worked with him, you know, in his previous career as a logger, and also as a landowner along the way, and he's just an exceptional person. He truly cares about the land and everything that he's doing.